I am in the production business. I understand what is worth doing for ratings. I understand what is worth doing when the industry is canceling one black guy. I know what happens when they are going to elevate another. And I know what happens when they don't care about either one. This is how quarterbacking go. So the question is, hey, your quarterback just got sacked. Did we know we was fin to sack your quarterback? We absolutely did. It was a play, buddy. We've been rehearsing it, working it out, making sure that at some point, when you get to this level, we can make sure we knock you from a $20 million man to putting in the news that people won't hire you no more.
Spoke to 50, and then she said 50. And this is exact words that came out her mouth. 50 does not determine what goes in and go.
Every major controversy leaves two wounds. The one broadcast to the public and the deeper one erased before the edit ever locks. Katt Williams has long warned that when chaos unfolds on camera and the money still moves, the outcome was designed before the spotlight switched on. This saga bears that same fingerprint: bold headlines, official probes, dramatic clips, a polished version built for mass consumption, clean enough to protect powerful interests lurking offstage. But beyond the streaming-ready storyline sits a sharper reality: a sidelined witness claiming the full scope, a founding partner stripped of influence yet still guarding the brand, and a filmmaker who insiders say decided early who would be heard and who would fade into silence. Katt's message still cuts through. In an illusion-driven industry, nothing is accidental, not the heroes, not the fall guys, and not the voices missing from the final cut. Tonight isn't about replaying a collapse. It's about confronting the real question. If this story was engineered from the opening move, what was deliberately removed? And who had to be silenced to make the narrative land exactly as you were meant to see it? High voltage.
Everything that happens in a business, that's based off of pretend, that seems like a setup, is.
Yes. What I'm saying is, if Jussie Smollett and Lee Daniels for a living make stories that are not real, and they make them so good that people believe them and buy them, and that's what business they're in, why would you think it would be weird if they flipped out and said a story that turned out to not be true?
Why? Why would we think that if they are capable of doing that for a living?
That's what they do for a living. They do that 300 episodes. Is take something fictitious and make it seem real.
Katt breaks it down without fluff. In an industry powered by illusion, anything that feels staged usually is. He's not speaking in theory. He's pointing straight at writers, producers, and executives who master the art of making fiction feel real, then turn that same machinery on real people and real outcomes. From his view, scandals, collapses, and headline-grabbing clashes aren't random explosions. They're narratives drafted behind closed doors long before the public ever looks up. Once you see it through that lens, Gone Deal's version of the documentary stops sounding like a simple miscommunication and starts reading like a script that was already locked. The long-standing security role, the childhood ties, the partner with real leverage, and Gene's own perspective were supposed to land together and push the story beyond a platform-safe polish. But when the power brokers step in, the pattern always reveals itself. They decide who gets a microphone, what truth gets trimmed, and which voices never survive the final cut. High voltage.
There's one night 50 called me up, and they got him on the phone. Me and him was just talking. We was talking about old time. Sit down with Black Hands. Sit down with with Puff Kids, the whole Puff situation, and this documentary that he's going to be doing. You know what I'm saying? So I told him that I was going to, have Kirk and Tim. Kirk will be the one who talk about the business part of it. Tim will be the one who talk about the growing up phase with Diddy and everything and over there working in the record industry with him and stuff like that. They was like family. And I was going to talk about, the street stuff, what was going on with Bad Boy, with the security, with Wolf, with the City College, with, the time that I knew about when I was with him up until about early 2004 or something like that. But basically the streets and then the traveling with him and the atmosphere and everything. And then go back into the Notorious Big stuff with the Tupac and the whole 9 yards, all the stuff that I knew. You know what I'm saying? So we was talking and he sounded like, yo, listen to him. They gonna spare no expense with this whole documentary. So I said,
according to Gene, it started the way major industry stories always do, with a call from producers who knew exactly where the real insight lived. They made it clear that no one understood the inner machinery better than the person who moved beside him through club back doors, studio sessions, and restricted hallways where the real decisions happened. That access wasn't incidental, it was the point. Gene wasn't approached as background noise or a supporting voice, but as a cornerstone, someone positioned to anchor the entire documentary with first-hand perspective and earned authority, giving the story weight far beyond surface-level commentary and polished talking points.
Did was that I spoke to Tim and I spoke to Kirk Burroughs, and I was like, yo, because I had Tim numbered. Tim didn't know how to get in touch with Kirk. Kirk didn't know how to get in touch with Tim, but Kirk was trying to tell me, give him the number with the Tim. I said, nah, I ain't doing that. So I gave one of the producers the number in the whole 9 yards to get in touch with Tim because I want to see him get money because I know Tim got a hell of a story with Puff. So then I talked to Tim and I told him, yo, listen here, man, we should go in as a package deal. All three of us, we could tell a hell of a story about this whole documentary. You know what I'm saying? From front to start. Then whatever stuff that they get and everything like that. So let's go in there and ask them for 50 a piece. You know what I'm saying? So Tim was like, with it, yo, Gene, whatever, go ahead like that. Kirk was like, yeah, okay, cool, Gene. It was like a general census that we was gonna do this in a whole package deal. You know what I'm saying? And then I started speaking to the producers and everything like that because 50 had told me himself that they was going to spare no cost in doing this because he wanted to tell the story and he wanted to tell the story like it was supposed to be told.
Gene says the plan was never built around a lone voice. It was structured from day one as a full spectrum account. Gon would represent the streets and security reality. Tim would speak on the formative childhood years, and Kirk Burroughs would handle the business history and documented foundation behind the brand. 3 insiders, each holding a different piece of the puzzle, stepping forward together with real stakes, putting their names, faces, and receipts on record. According to Gon, that framework had early backing and no resistance until the tone shifted at the top, the moment control entered the room. That's when the narrative pivoted, and the one person who had seen everything up close was suddenly portrayed as asking for too much, not because the story lacked value, but because his perspective carried more weight than the final cut was prepared to carry. High voltage.
The director, I gotta get her name, man, because it don't even sound. I want to put her on blast because she was telling me, she was saying to me that what I was asking for was crazy and they wasn't spending money like that. I'm talking about you got footage, you got clothing, you got, I was doing footage, I had pictures, all the stuff that I had, you could figure out a way to pay a brother and stuff like that. And then I was telling her about some prices that I've already received and I had the invoices to show it. And then she was calling me like I was lying. I'm like, yo, who do you think you talking to? You know what I'm saying? And she was talking about, there's no way nobody paid. Nobody what? I say, first of all you people come with these documentaries and stuff. The first thing you tell me, y'all tell these people out here that y'all don't pay, and y'all pay. If you can make a picture look like $10,000-$15,000, you know what I'm saying? You can sit here and tell me that you're gonna pay me for my time sitting right down here with y'all. You understand? So then, one thing led to another. And I was like, all right, well then, F you, I spoke to 50. And then she said 50. And this is exact words that came out her mouth. 50 does not determine what goes in and goes out of this documentary. And he definitely don't pay. He determine what somebody get paid. It's not his documentary like that. I was like, oh, so if it's not his documentary and I spoke to him like that, I don't need to be doing nothing with you because I'm doing this on the strength of him. But you gonna pay me if I do it. So it went back and forth, you know what I'm saying, for a little bit. And then they had Kirk Burrows giving me calls and everything like that. What are you calling me for? You know what I'm saying? I'm not, get out of here. I know what kind of dude you is anyway. Me and you cool and everything, Kirk, but don't call me about no business with this stuff like that. And then what I found out is that he was making a deal, cutting a deal for himself as well as Tim. You understand? And I was trying to get a deal for all three of us. You understand? So that's how them industry cats go. You know, that's...
Gene says everything flipped the instant real money and real control entered the room. The pushback didn't come from the face on the poster. It came from the director. According to Gene, she brushed off the numbers as unreasonable, dismissed proof of what comparable productions had already paid, and made one thing clear. Branding didn't equal authority because the final decisions sat firmly in her chair. That's when the temperature changed. While Gene argued for a fair share, not just for himself, but for the two men he brought into the project, he realized the ground was shifting beneath him. Quiet conversations started happening, side paths opened up, and separate deals began forming as Tim and Kirk were suddenly approached on their own. Almost overnight, the person holding the footage, the photos, and the most uncomfortable truths was reframed as the obstacle. It's a familiar industry tactic. The closer someone gets to the sharp edges of reality, the faster they're labeled. Difficult. High voltage.
First and foremost, you got your man Russell Simmons out here dealing with these young girls. You understand? Kim Porter was one of them. She was then passed from Russell Simmons to Andre Harrell. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm just gonna give it to you. You understand? Because these we out here playing, talking all this, acting like they know what they talking about. She was working for Russell first, then she was passed over to Andre Harrell. You understand? So now Andre Harrell has her in the office and stuff like that. And it was said that it was a girl also in Uptown, and I don't know if it was Kim. I don't know if it was Kim or one of her friends walked in on Andre Harrell getting a fellatio and was given a red Mercedes-Benz 300C for keeping her mouth closed behind her. You understand? Because when Kirk Burrows was talking about Puff did that or whatever like that, you understand? It actually happened to Andre Harrell up in Uptown Records. Kim Porter's at the desk because Andre Harrell is doing Russell Simmons a favor by giving her a job over there. Because now Russell Simmons is trying to get her friend Kamoya. Because all of them was actors. All of them was models. Kim, Kamoya, and they was young girls. So now her and Al get together and everything like that. Check this out. Kim didn't get with Puff until Puff got his deal. Because you got to realize Misa Kim was cool. Kim didn't get with Puff until after Puff got his deal. So all that, he got her from Al and stuff like that. Nah. She went with the money was, bro. She went with the money. And you could call it whatever you want to. You understand what I'm saying? That's how.
Even the romance gets rewritten once the polish goes on. In the clean, dramatic retelling, he's cast as the villain, painted as someone who stole Kim Porter away like a made-for-TV storyline. But when you listen to the people who were actually there, that version doesn't hold up. Gene describes something far less theatrical and far more familiar. No force, no kidnapping, no manufactured helplessness. She moved toward influence and opportunity the same way the industry quietly conditions people to do every day. That, taken away, narrative didn't survive because it was true. It survived because it was simple, emotional, and easy to sell. And more importantly, it kept audiences focused on a digestible drama instead of asking harder questions about power, pressure, and how much control really existed inside that circle. High voltage.
They said Big had paid for his funeral through his budget. You know what I'm saying? So if anybody would know that, Kirk Burrow would know that. And I heard Wayne Barrows came out and said some shit, but to refute that. You know what I'm saying? But if Miss Wallace got a check and the check, if she got Biggie's, if they had Biggie's budget and that was taken out, money was taken out that budget for his funeral, he did use it. And if anybody knew that, Kirk Burrows would know that. It was his manager. Big had told me that he was going to get rid of them because they didn't know what they was doing before he died. You know, I had a conversation with Big. Big said, yo, I'm getting rid of them because they didn't want to F me up, because they didn't want to convince him to sell his publishing and his marketing to Puff. They was Puff boys. I guess they met in school or whatever like that. But Big was going to get rid of them. But because he died and his mother didn't know the business, she kept him around for years. If you look at anything that happened with the Notorious Biggs and his camp, you see Wayne Barrows on there as executive producer. And he was just a manager of some of Big affairs. He was executive producers of damn near everything that went on that had to do with. If Miss Wallace was the executive producer, he was the executive producer too. Look at some of the things that was done. And now he's suing, trying to get money from Faith because of, he's saying that she has to pay the Wallace estate, and Miss Wallace is dead. Big is dead. If the estate is anything, it's CJ, Tatiana, and Faith. Then there was a situation that somebody said long time ago in the office. They caught Kirk giving Puff a fellatio in the office. Now that was the rumor that was going around. How true it is? They was lovers. It came out in his lawsuit. He tried to say that Puff was, what he saying? But if somebody you, how you letting them come stay at your house every Wednesday night after the club? I think they were boyfriends, you know. I think, my honest opinion, I think Kirk was in love with Puff to a certain degree. And Puff was using him. And Kirk was giving up the bugina to him. Anything Puff asked him to do, he would do. You know, he'd go at people, he'd talk. Kirk would talk to on the behalf of Puff. And I believe that that was his man to a certain degree in his mind. And the way he was saying documentary, you could feel that they had a relationship. He was hurt behind being Justin's godfather. He allowed Puff to tell him that he was caught up with Misa and everything like that. He believed all this I got out of it. I don't know what you and other people got out of it. He was saying like he was a scorned lover.
But how did you find out that he gave Diddy fellatio? You know who they came from?
Well, we heard that a long time ago. Like when I was working for Bad Boy. I heard that rumor a long time ago. I was working with Bad Boy that Kirk was caught up giving them a fellatio in the office, and they got rid of one of the interns for walking in on him or something like that. You understand? But then Kirk come out in this documentary, in this lawsuit, and say he was giving Puff was making him, giving him fellatios and the bugina. That's in his lawsuit. But I guess if Cassie is a scorn lover,
he did witness the company rise at full throttle, and he did get pushed to the margins as the brand accelerated into billionaire territory, leaving others who helped lay the foundation watching success from the outside instead of sharing in it. But when you really listen to Gene, a deeper layer emerges, and it's not just about contracts or percentages, it's about loyalty and emotional alignment. He describes Kirk not simply as a former partner, but as someone deeply devoted, willing to absorb firings, fallout, and personal loss while still protecting the same system by carefully navigating around anything that could burn everyone involved. By the time the documentary hits streaming, it plays like a fearless insider finally speaking his truth. But if Gene and Katt's perspective holds, what audiences are actually seeing is a carefully selected voice, wounded enough to frame Diddy as ruthless, yet loyal enough to steer clear of the most sensitive financial realities and buried truths. A bad boy positioned exactly where the industry prefers him, compelling, conflicted, and safely contained between the lines, far from the official record. High voltage.
Incidental, or you would be hearing who's losing money. In all of these situations, it's only the artist that's losing. Somebody makes big money. When these rappers get killed, not incidental. Somebody made $100 million and now don't have to talk to that artist or none of their crew, don't have to validate none of their contracts. Now only got to deal with the mama, only got to see her once a year, and it's over. And the money goes up and up and up. So they killed this $20 million guy, but they reached 60.
By now, the pattern is impossible to miss. Katt describes an industry where nothing is accidental, where stars are treated like multi-million-dollar assets, carefully built up and quietly discarded the moment they stop serving the larger plan. Gene walks you through how the one person with the clearest, closest view of everything became a liability the instant he asked to be valued like his insight actually mattered. And Kirk remains placed right at the center, co-founder, deeply connected insider, wounded participant, and quiet gatekeeper, revealing just enough to frame Diddy as ruthless, but never enough to threaten the entire machine. He's emotional enough to feel authentic, yet too costly, too complicated, and too controlled to ever speak without limits. That balance isn't accidental. It's by design. High voltage.